Let's talk specifically about one candidate, Kara Lawson at Duke. And if there's any one candidate that everybody says go higher, go higher, go higher, this is easy. That's the candidate. Caleb, I believe in and of itself, being a Lady Vol makes things more difficult, especially if you have to part ways, which has been the case with the past two in Holly Warlick and Kelly Harper. I'm not hiring a Lady Vol for anything. I don't want a former Lady Vol. I want things to be easy and more business-like. Am I wrong?
From that perspective, you have a point, because I can tell you that it's not just Lady Vols. Just go to any place you've ever been, go to any school. When they hire beloved former players, it becomes much harder to fire them.
Yes.
Tennessee has their own experience with that. They gave Johnny Majors a way longer leash than he deserved when he was at Tennessee. Right now, the Memphis Tigers, they gave Larry Finch a very long leash, and now they're giving Penny Hardaway an insanely long leash that he doesn't deserve because they love him too much. So if you go from that perspective that it's hard to fire them, I agree. Don't make the decision, though, because you think that being a former Lady Vol will make it harder for them to succeed at Tennessee. Kelly Harper didn't fail because she's a former Lady Vol. She failed because she wasn't qualified for the job, and she wasn't a good coach. That's why she failed. And she was hired because she was a Lady Vol. You shouldn't take that into account when you make the hires. But I do think if someone is right for the job, you don't turn them down because they were legends at your school and you're worried about that. I don't think Florida in 1989 was like, Spurrier won two ACC titles at Duke, but we shouldn't hire him because he won a Heisman when he played for us. So that could cause some problems. I think they're very happy that they hired Steve Spurrier in
Yeah, I think they're
1990.
fine with that. By the way, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. If you haven't done that to this point, click like right now. The thumbs up button, I forgot to say it, will be connected with Jimmy Hyams here in a second. At least we hope. We're having a little bit of connectivity issues, but we will work through it. Kara Lawson to me is a player who I think you also wonder how that relationship is, because she was on the board of trustees and a lot of people didn't like that for Tennessee when she was the head coach at Duke. And you shouldn't be on the board of trustees for one school when you're the head coach at another school, right? Caleb, can we agree on that?
That's very true. Very complicated.
I mean, that's just simple. She I don't think she took that particularly the right way. I think there might be some hurt feelings there. I will just tell you, I don't think there's any way that Kara Lawson, who's just coached 4 seasons and one was shortened by COVID, I don't think she's, from the people I talked to, anywhere in the running. I'm not trying to drop bad news on the ones that want her, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that probably won't. And you don't want any sort of hurt feelings in that regard. But if any feelings are hurt, it's Duke on that. Duke should be more upset than Tennessee that she's on the board of trustees of Tennessee while she's coaching Duke. Kara Lawson is a very smart business person to a degree that, look, if I saw a future for Kara Lawson at Tennessee, I'd maybe one day be athletic director after Danny White retires. I think she's one of the smartest people to ever play any sport at Tennessee. But I'm not against the Kara Lawson. Her profile is a little bit less this year than it was last year because they didn't take a big leap forward. And I think because of that, she's not as high on the radar. I just think in general, look, I don't think don't make the hire because she's a former Lady Vol. I would say don't make the hire because they're more qualified coaches. We just named 2 that you're not even the biggest fans of. They have a better track record right now than Kara Lawson has. Again, it's funny that I didn't even think of Yolette McPhee-McQueen yesterday, but what she's done at Ole Miss, I'm talking myself into her. She's done a heck of a job there so far.
All right, we think we have Jimmy Hyams here. Let's bring him up. We don't see his camera. We don't see him, but let's see if we got him. Do we have Jimmy? We don't. I don't think we have Jimmy. We're still working on Jimmy. We'll get Jimmy connected here momentarily. The Kara Lawson hiring too, it doesn't seem like it's going to win a press conference. And I'm the one who says you don't have to win a press conference, but John Adams said it. To have 3 Lady Vol point guards, that just isn't going to play well for anybody. That's going to be the worst press conference in Tennessee since Lane Kiffin danced all over the podium.
Well, this is what you talked about yesterday too. it's not like the Tennessee Lady Vols can crap out money the way Tennessee football can. And so maybe that's not the best way to phrase that, but
no, that's perfect. It's exactly the phrase I woke up this morning thinking I've got to use that on the show.
And so you probably do have to think a little more politicking of how to sell. You probably have to sell even though it's the Lady Vols and they have a tradition, that is a program you have to sell more than football, right? Like you don't care if you want to put press conference in football.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have to sell it more because the fan base is getting older, right?
Well, I mean, it's getting older, and the old school way of thinking of that fan base is why they've fallen off the way they have, because of the demands they've made for the program. I mean, again, the Lady Vols are in very, very, very dangerous territory and very close to becoming Notre Dame and the Notre Dame of women's basketball. By the way, I want to point this out. If Pat Summitt doesn't hit the lottery and land Candace Parker, the Lady Vols don't have a national championships in 25 years right now. So, I mean, the program was sliding before their last national title. It's just they got Candace Parker.
Hold on, timeout. If sliding from having the best front court in the history of women's basketball is sliding, then yes, everybody has slid at some point. I mean, that the Meeks were pretty special. Come on.
They were, but from 99
did you expect her just to keep lining those up? Was Michigan just supposed to have the Fab Five over and over and over?
She went 9 years without a national title from 98 to 07. I mean, it was because she landed Candace Parker. And by the way, for those Lady Vols teams at Candace Parker, the old Pat Summitt teams, kind of like the UConn teams did, you remember this, Dave, they overwhelmed you with the best player at every single position. Though that 07 and 08 team, those two national titles, they had solid players in Alexis Hornbuckle, Sydney Spencer, those guys. But Candace Parker lifted that team on her back those 2 years. I mean, people like to say Shamika Holdsclaw, Candace Parker, who's the best player. They say Holdsclaw has 3 national titles. Candace Parker's the better player. Candace Parker had way less help, and she willed that team to 2 national titles by herself with solid role players, but everything went around her.
Drinker says Caleb could find fault in God. Possibly.
God found fault in himself. He destroyed the whole earth with a flood because he said, I screwed up with what I made here. Okay.
You guys. All right. Well, he's not going to be doing that for the Lady Vols anytime soon. At least we don't think so. All right. So I haven't asked you this. Just paint your picture of a perfect candidate. I will say mine, and not that I would turn down another candidate. If Kim Mulkey calls and says I'm interested, I'm not turning her down. Don't get me wrong. But it would be somebody that's around, because I see Smoky Mountain Red said they need energy pumped back into the program. I think they do. So, younger rather than older, which maybe I'm contradicting myself a little bit. No tie to the Lady Vols. And I do think that it's more important now to think about what style a coach runs, because you are battling for that ticket as opposed to them sitting at home. So I would want to coach with an up and down fun style. It wouldn't be the first thing on my list, Caleb, but it would be on my list.
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, man, Lady Vol contingency would get so mad at you on that. They're like, we're all defense and Pat Summitt and rebounding, and that's what we're built on. But I mean, I agree with you. Maybe I think the refusal to go more guard oriented of the Lady Vols program the past 10 years has really held them back. So I would be fine with a little more tempo. But then again, I mean, maybe sometimes having an identity works. I mean, let's be honest, Dave. I thought offense in football was more about tempo and running the pace. And Jim Harbaugh comes in and says, we're going to stick to the same power I that Michigan has run for 120 years since the Fielding Yost days, and they went and won a national title doing it. So I mean, honestly, I maybe I could be wrong on that. Maybe Tennessee can do that.
Well, let's ask the man right here. Jimmy Hyams. We have technical issues figured out, and Jimmy joins us. Boy, it was a day, wasn't it, Jimmy, to get through connected. You and I back in the day, it was typewriters when we were good with it.
Yeah, I remember the old Radio Shack machines.
I remember the Radio Shacks, period. I wish they still had those. They started selling those RV things. Do want to ask you about Kara Lawson. That's what we were discussing here right before you jumped on. I just think that would be a terrible fit for the Lady Vols because it seems as if she doesn't have a long track record, and it seems as if the Lady Vols have been down that road twice before. What would you make of that?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say a terrible fit, but I think there are better fits. I think there are other coaches out there that I would prefer to hire over Kara Lawson. Lawson has done an okay job at Duke. Kelly Harper did an okay job, at Missouri State. So I don't like this thought that you got to stick with the Lady Vols. Somebody that has been in the program knows the program. I think it's time to branch out. They've gone that direction twice. It hasn't worked. And I'm not opposed to hiring a male coach either. I know there have been some administrators that said that, excuse me, they'd only hire a female coach in that role. I disagree with that. I think you hire the best coach out there. I'd say they made a huge mistake not hiring Wes Moore a few years ago when he was at Chattanooga. Look at the job he's done at NC State. So I think they're better candidates than Lawson, but I wouldn't say it's a horrible fit. But I like this, the coach at Southern Cal. I think she's really good. I like the coach at Louisville. I think he's really good. I just think they're better candidates out there.
Great stuff, Caleb.
Yeah, so Jimmy, I'm with you. It's funny because I think now the sentiment is don't hire a former Lady Vol because the last two didn't work out. I'm on the sentiment that don't hire someone because they're a Lady Vol. You're right. I'm not stick within the program. But if someone were to work out, don't ignore them because they're a former Lady Vol. I'm just with you. I think that Kara Lawson doesn't have the track record or the qualifications yet to be head coach at Tennessee. I will say this. I think we're being a little unfair. Kara Lawson has done more at Duke so far than Kelly Harper did throughout her career. Philip Fulmer hired Kelly Harper because of one lucky Sweet 16 run. And how often, Jimmy, in your years of covering basketball, have you seen coaches get hired because of one NCAA tournament run and then they turn out to not work out?
Yeah, Jerry Green, right? Jim, didn't Jerry Green have an Oregon run right before he got hired at Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember him saying he was like the seventh choice. I remember him saying, I wasn't the first choice, but I was the right choice. No, you weren't. But having said that, and look, I agree with Caleb's point about you shouldn't penalize Kara Lawson because she's a Lady Vol, but you shouldn't hire just because she's a Lady Vol. So, but again, I think there are better candidates out there. Hey, it may be that the candidates that I like, the top 4 or 5 that would be on my list, you can't hire them, and then you end up hiring Kara Lawson. So that may be what happens. You don't get who you want. I was talking to somebody that said you need to go after Dawn Staley. Okay, I get that, but why in the world would she leave what she's built at South Carolina? I don't see that happening. I don't mind the thought, but I think it's unrealistic. But I think there are other candidates, again, that I think are better than Kara Lawson, and we'll see where that ends up. Kelly Harper had a decent run at Missouri State. But see, here's the way I look at her. She's a good coach for Missouri State and for Western Carolina. But at the 2 major programs she coached at, Tennessee and North Carolina State, she didn't do so well. She got fired at NC State. She got fired at Tennessee. So I think she's probably a mid-level college coach, not a coach at an elite program.